Part 1. Feng Mo stepped into the ruins of the villa with 1 foot, and all the broken walls and tiles were the same as 5 years ago, lingering silently. Inexhaustible weeds are growing like years. Maybe years from now, except for that touch of turquoise. Everything will be gone. Entering the former Renyi Villa in just a moment, it is like passing through 100 disasters. The burnt stone road has long lost its old shape, and the noisy people have been annihilated in the ruthless story. Those drunken fans who sang and danced, and those who wore rosy and brocade tents with red embroidery and fragrance, all eventually returned to silent black and gray, and I don't know who mixed into the stove. Going deeper, Feng Mo saw a small mountain, surrounded by a cold spring that flowed out from nowhere, like a barrier, blocking the bloodline of slaughter and bloodshed. Feng Mo went up the mountain, and unexpectedly found a well-preserved garden halfway up the mountain. There were 2 words on the arch, Feng Yuan. It's like showing the deep warmth in someone's heart, with a kind of atmosphere that is incompatible with desolation. What happened here? Young man. An extremely old voice sounded behind him. Feng Mo turned around in amazement, and couldn't help but take a step back. In front of him was a hideous old man. The wrinkles and scars on his face were connected together, and he could not tell which were the marks of the sword, and which were the traces of time. Young man is alone, what are you doing in this abandoned garden? Junior Feng Mo, who just entered the arena and is traveling around, has heard the name of Renyi Villa for a long time. Is it inconvenient to come and pay my respects? No matter how famous it is, it's nothing but a pile of ruins. What can you look up to? Senior, are you from this village? The old man's surname is Sun. You don't need to be polite, young man, just call me old man Sun. This old man used to water the flowers and watch the gate of this Feng Yuan. Hey, who would have thought that now the owner is dead and gone, and I am the only one left. This old life is here, and I don't know how long I can stay in this Renyi Villa. The old man walked past Feng Mo and walked slowly into Feng Yuan, occasionally accompanied by a few coughs. It's getting late now. Since you're here, you can be considered a destined person. If you don't dislike it, then let's stay for now. Feng Mo hurriedly followed, and said, it's a lot of nuisance. Just senior, can you tell me what happened here 3 years ago? Old man's son glanced at him strangely. Have you never heard of it? 5 years ago, one night after the sudden death of the old villa owner, there was a fire, and the Renyi Villa became what it is now. The cold spring at the foot of the mountain avoided the fire, and I hid in this Feng Yuan and fled the villa. Listening to those shouts, which were as lively as fire, I really don't know how many people became demons and how many became Buddhas. Feng Mo felt that there was a hidden irony in the old man's words, and he couldn't help but ask. The old village owner has strong martial arts skills and a strong body. How could he die suddenly? And in that fire, how could the experts in the villa let a fire burn clean? Old man's son squinted his eyes. Young man is here to hear the story. Feng Mo hurriedly said, the junior has doubts in his heart, and I hope the seniors will give me some advice. In the blink of an eye, the 2 of them had reached the innermost room in Feng Yuan. Old man's son opened the door tremblingly, and lit the lamp. The setting sun has disappeared, and there is still a little residual temperature around. Although there is a lot of dust in this house, it can barely live in it. Young man is staying overnight. This old man will go and boil some hot water. The story that the master asked will be answered in a while. After that, the old man walked out slowly, and his back inexplicably made people feel depressed. Feng Mo looked at the room carefully. The red tent was still there, the carved beams were covered in gray, the green gauze was still on the window, and the bronze mirror was a little blurry. As if he could still smell the rouge scent of the women's boudoir in those years, but the beauty was gone, and there was nowhere to find it. The flowers in the courtyard are also withered. Has the beauty died? Suddenly, the door was pushed open with a bang. Feng Mo turned around, and there was a young man standing at the door, with a tall stature, slender eyebrows, a strange smile in the corners of his eyes, and he stared at Feng Mo intently for a while. Then opened his mouth and made a strange and intermittent voice. Fang Fang. Fang Fang. Ha ha. Fang. Feng Mo was stunned for a moment. He never thought that such a handsome man would be a fool. The man laughed in a demented manner, drooling, and calling out words that people don't understand, but it has an indescribable sadness. What are you doing here? Go back, don't startle the guests. Old man's son with a kettle appeared at the door, scolding the fool in a low voice. Fang Fang. The fool looked a little confused, tilted his head slightly, and his smile gradually faded. Fang Fang died a long time ago, go back quickly. Fang Fang, dead. The fool's articulation became very clear, and then he stared at Feng Mo in a daze, through the old house behind the teenager, looking at someone who could not be seen again, something that could not be turned back. Suddenly, the fool's eyes turned, as if he became smart in an instant. A strange smile appeared again, his voice suddenly increased, he shouted loudly, ran and jumped away. Fang Fang is dead, ha ha, you are dead, I am dead, ha ha. All dead, clean, ha ha. When the fool's laughter faded away, the old man's son sighed, went into the room, took out a cup, carefully wiped the dust, and poured a cup of steaming water. That's man. It was already like this when I rescued him 5 years ago. Ah. Don't you want to listen to the story? If there is nothing else to do, the old man will tell you what you want to know. Old man's son couldn't see his expression clearly, his tone was indifferent. That's Qiuzin, the son-in-law of the old Lord ᎢℋᎪNorszá. He became famous as a teenager and a chivalrous man in white. I don't know how many people in spring boudoir dreams wanted to marry ᎢℋᎪNorszá Feng, the only daughter of ᎢℋᎪNorszá Lang, the owner of Renyi Villa. It's just a pity to become the heir of the villa. Feng Mo nodded. It turns out that Fang Fang is Mrs. Qiu. It seems that they are really deeply in love. Old man's son smiled eccentrically. Those who are affectionate or not, they know it best in their own hearts. It's like this villa of loyalty, filial piety, benevolence and righteousness. There are all kinds of black and yellow in it. Who knows? How do you say this? Feng Mo asked. The old man's son didn't answer, he just said in a succinct manner, Qiuzin was a master of art, and only joined the village when he was a year old, but his status rose rapidly in a short period of time, almost surpassing the old village owner disciple in ᎢℋᎪNorszá. I heard that it is because of a strange medicine, which is made from a flower called poppy in Myojiang, called rejuvenation dispersion, which has the miraculous effect of life and death. The old village owner is 100 times more energetic after using it, just like rejuvenating. Feng Mo asked curiously, since there is such an elixir, how could the old village owner suddenly die? Elixir? When did I say it was an elixir? Old man's son's voice became higher. I think it's more or less a poison. After the old village owner took it for a while, his body was not as good as before, and even his reaction was slow. I can see it as a doorman. Some people said in private that Qiuzin's origin was unknown, and it might not be goodwill. He was heard by the old banker and drove him out. The intention of protecting Qiuzin was clear. After a while, Qiuzin actually begged for marriage. Is that how the old village owner agreed? Old man's son replied lightly, the old village owner doesn't know what kind of bewitched he was betrayed. For those few bites of poison, he was able to sell his own flesh and blood. This old man has lived for such a long age. Look at this person, what kind of flesh and blood, what acquaintances, lovers, even skin, 3 souls and 7 souls, all kinds of things, but if you are extremely poor, there is nothing you can sell, but you don't know what to ask for. It's natural to ask for something that you can't ask for. Feng Mo smiled, and his delicate facial features suddenly made people feel a little weird. What you can't ask for, like life, old age, illness and death. It's fate. It's a pity that there are some people who don't believe in fate. Did Miss ᎢℋᎪNNu agree? The old man's son shook his head. There is someone in her heart. At that time, she was looking for death, but she couldn't resist the old owner who was obsessed. Who? Eldest Miss once told the old man that when she was young, she knew a young man from an old friend's family. After so many years, she has never forgotten him. Old friend. Old man's son paused for a while, as if he had remembered something, and after a long time he said, the old friend's surname is Li. Fengmo thought about it, and suddenly remembered an old incident in the villa, and could not help but blurt out, Li Xiu, the senior brother of the old village owner ᎢℋᎪNNu? I heard that Li Xiu deceived his master and destroyed his ancestors in order to covet his master's secret book, and was later killed by the old village owner ᎢℋᎪNNu. I don't know if it's true or not. Old man's son sighed. Actually, who can tell what is true or false? Even if it is clear, what can be done? The dead have already passed the bridge of helplessness, and they can't be resurrected. The living are confused and don't know how to repent. The child of the Li family is called ᎢℋᎪNNu. I don't know if that child is still alive in the world. He has learned a lot from the painstaking efforts of his elders. Then Miss ᎢℋᎪNNu. Seeing that she couldn't impress the old village owner, she began to ruin her reputation. At that time, all kinds of rumors began to spread in the village. Kyuzan couldn't tolerate such a watery poplars as his fiancée, but who knows? He actually endured it, and didn't say a single heavy word to the eldest lady. At that time, he was favored by the old village owner, and supported by a group of people who had taken rejuvenation dispersion. He should have been proud, but anyone can see that he has lost his soul all day. Hey, it is also a sin. End of part 1.